He's an artist who's had significant unfavourable headlines, but who's only ever remembered for his artistry and vision. It's Tyler, the Creator. Welcome to Six Notes or Separation. If you're new to the podcast, here's how it's going to work. Every episode, I dive into an artist, exploring their lives, their music, and any scandals they might have got themselves tangled up in. But to keep things fun and flirty, to keep things thought-provoking for you all, I've put my own little spin on things. Every episode has to be linked to the previous and succeeding episode in some way. This could be through artists having a collaboration, for example. It could be through them having a producer in common, or a relationship history of some type, maybe some subliminal lyrical references. Truly anything goes, as long as there's a link. So, without further ado, I'm going to be jumping into the life of the artist who's as much a visionary as he is a hyperactive goofball, who's been subject to as much controversy as he has respect and adoration, and who ultimately has won over the critics and the public with his strong will to do whatever the hell he wants to do. It's time to look at the life of Tyler, the Creator. Before I do this, however, we've hit the point of the pod where I reveal the link between this episode and last episode's Doechii. You might know about the friendship between the two due to Doechii's feature on Tyler's latest album, Chromacopia, in which she joins him on the track Balloon. But the beginnings of where this friendship was first kindled is rather ambiguous and kind of kept private. From Doechii's end, Tyler, the Creator has always been a massive inspiration to her, not only in terms of his experimenting with sound and his visionary way of thinking, but also through his freedom of fashion and sexuality too. It's all something like stuff we're going to dive into on the podcast, but Doechii takes huge inspiration from Tyler's way of kind of incorporating fashion into and visuals into his music, into his artistry. So when Tyler messaged her on Instagram, presumably congratulating her or singing her praises in one way or another, it must have come as quite a starstruck moment for Doechii. Their mutual respect transcended Instagram when Tyler attended Doechii's release party for her mixtape Alligator Bites Never Heal, the newly Best Rap Album awarded at the Grammys this year. So very well deserved and so exciting. And only a month later, she hopped on his album before being brought out on stage with him during his set at Camp Flognaw. So, all in all, it's a very sweet and very wholesome industry friendship between Tyler and Doechii. But the life of Tyler, the Creator, is disappointingly not quite so much all sunshine and rainbows. It's actually a life and career sprinkled with cancel culture and controversies. And on that note, let me take you back to the start of Tyler, the Creator's life. It's 1991 and we're in California when Tyler Okonma is born. Music was something that always fascinated Tyler, with him taking album covers out of CD cases to recreate covers of his own when he was just 7 years old. So already that intrinsic artistry and visionary is inside him. His fascination grew at the age of 14 when he started to learn the piano. But the fulfillment music gave him wasn't enough to stop his childhood from being difficult. During his 12 years of schooling, he was moved around to 12 different schools, being kicked out for his hyperactivity and restlessness. And it was because of this that he really struggled to find friends and to actually fit in anywhere. And again, I think this is something that kind of plagues him throughout his whole life. Like he never really quite fits into one genre, and that's why people find him so inspiring. He doesn't have a tribe. He's kind of just his own person, and that's ultimately what gained him respect in the long run. But yeah, from an early age, it was kind of what he really, really struggled to cope with, is not having friends and not really feeling like he belonged anywhere. He wasn't sporty and he couldn't join the school band since he couldn't read music. So it was actually rapping that earned him the respect of his peers and gave him a creative outlet via MySpace. Just like Ice Spice and Charlie XCX, previous episodes I've done, Tyler, the Creator, was the name born out of a social media tagline, in this case being Tyler's MySpace account. And so at 16 years old, in 2007, Tyler makes music his main focus, forming a group called The Odd Future Wolfgang Kill Them All. Odd Future was a collective comprised of rappers, producers, creatives, etc. And they gave birth to a number of successful artists such as Frank Ocean and, more loosely, Steve Lacy. They were a hugely, hugely, hugely influential group in the early 2000s. And it's funny because the group never see themselves as being an influence. Like, whenever Tyler's told, wow, like, you know, Odd Future really changed the game in terms of rap and hip hop, he will never ever accept that. All he says is that we weren't, you know, we didn't do anything that was industry shaking. We were just different. We weren't inspirational, we were just different. That difference allowed freedom for other artists. We never, you know, we weren't amazing musicians. Again, we were just different. And that's something he really hammers in on every single time Odd Future are, you know, praised. In 2008, at the age of 17, Tyler released his first professional mixtape with Odd Future, leading him to release his own solo debut album, Bastard, in 2009. Now, just to interject quickly, the Tyler you know now is not the Tyler from back then. His first two albums, Bastard and Goblin, received a lot of backlash for their transgressive and homophobic lyrics. So much so that Tyler, the Creator, ended up being banned from not only New Zealand, but from Australia and the UK too. In 2014, he was banned from entering New Zealand after the immigration officials said he was a potential threat to public order and public interest for several reasons, including incidents at past performances in which he incited violence. You know, not a light comment there. Not a light comment at all. Here the officials are actually referring to an incident that took place in Boston in 2011, where Tyler, the Creator, was doing an album signing that caused police interference to control the crowds due to the amount of people lining up outside. Where it went wrong, though, is, I mean, there was no reason for Tyler to do this, but where it went wrong is when Tyler, alongside a couple of other Odd Future members, stood on the roof of the venue to shout insults at the police. You know, it was reckless, it was immature. The only excuse I can give him here is that he was young and dumb. But it was just unprofessional. Like, ultimately, he didn't need to do that. And I wouldn't say, but also in the same breath, like, I wouldn't say that because of that, I wouldn't classify that as inciting violence and therefore being worthy of a ban from New Zealand. Like, that being the reason he was banned from a country seems slightly outrageous and really disproportionate to the level of violence he incited, you know? But this refusal of letting Tyler perform was a wave that Australia and the UK quickly caught on to in 2015. In Australia, Collective Shout, a anti-abuse against women campaign, pleaded to their country to ban Tyler from entering and performing there after accusing his music of glorifying abuse against women. And the UK followed suit. The UK banned Tyler for 3 to 5 years after Theresa May, who was Home Secretary at the time, wrote a letter declaring that Tyler's music encouraged violence and the intolerance of homosexuality. She even went on to say his music fostered hatred with views that seemed to provoke others to terrorism acts. Therefore, guys, I can't with this story. Therefore, banning him from entering the country under anti-terrorism legislation. Can we take a minute there? Can we just take a moment to pause on what I've just said? How absurd is that? Tyler, the Creator, gets banned from Home Secretary Theresa May under anti-terrorism legislation because of the content of his lyrics. Now, his lyrics were pretty appalling. They were pretty appalling. On his first two albums, Bastard and Goblin, they were bad. Like, he used the F slur in terms of homophobia. He talks about raping women and murdering them. It's not good what he rapped about, what he wrote about. But I just think that causing a ban from entering a country for 3 to 5 years, it wasn't just like pulling him from performing festival. It was a literal ban on him entering the country. It's just absurd. I mean, to think that he was put in a detention room at Heathrow Airport, you know, days before he was meant to headline Reading and Leeds, only to receive a letter from Theresa May accusing him of inciting acts of terrorism. There's nothing really to it but absurdity. And also the amount of artists that talk about women in a misogynistic way and, you know, have homophobic lyrics is a number that you genuinely can't count on your fingers. Like, multiple artists do that. So why on earth Tyler has had to bear the brunt of this by facing anti-terrorism legislation, I really do not know. Like, why he was the one targeted for not entering the country and no one else was, is truly a mystery to me. And the fact that it was 3 separate countries that did this, like New Zealand, Australia, and the UK, all of them banned him from performing due to his alleged violence and homophobia and not really aligning with the country's values. But again, so many artists who I've explored in the series, people like Travis Scott, people like Kanye West, are the exact same, and I don't think they've ever been banned from a country. So it was just a bit, the whole thing's absurd. And when I read about it, I was like, what? That just makes absolutely no sense. Tyler, the Creator, responded to the ban by rightly accusing the British government of being racist, saying that the real reason for him being forbidden entry was because they didn't like the fact that their children were idolising a black man. This feels like a very fair point, considering Eminem, for example, was always welcome to perform in the UK, despite his music literally inspiring violence, literally encouraging violence. And also, Eminem was a huge influence on Tyler's first albums. Like those albums, I think Eminem, if I'm right in saying this, his music is very much a persona. Like, he doesn't write autobiographical music. I'm pretty sure he kind of channels this alter ego, which is kind of a very violent persona. And Tyler cited Eminem as inspiring those first 2 albums. Like, Tyler, the Creator, also said, this isn't autobiographical. Like, I haven't actually raped women. It's just this character that I'm playing in my music. It's not necessarily something I agree with. Like, it's just kind of like, why do you need to play a violent and horrific character? Like, there's not really a need. But that being said, going back to the point, Eminem was always welcome to the country and Tyler wasn't. So what's the reason behind that? Maybe it is race motivated. But despite these 2 large and problematic controversies, Tyler, the Creator, and his group Odd Future continued to go from strength to strength. Bastard was rated amongst Pitchfork's top albums of 2010. Not a bad start at all for a debut album, especially a debut album that's attracted as much controversy as it did. And Tyler also went on to win Best New Artist at the 2011 MTV Video Music Awards, or VMAs. Odd Future set up their own record label with Sony in 2011, through which they could release their music. They made their debut TV performance on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, and they started to gain attraction from fellow artists such as Rick Ross, Jay-Z, and Interscope Records co-founder Jimmy Levine. So 2011 wasn't a bad year for Odd Future or Tyler, the Creator, by any means. They got themselves wrapped up in headlines very, very quickly at a very, very young age. But all of that seemed to be escaped by the fact that they had massive success. In 2012, Odd Future took their creative talents to our screens, launching their 15-minute sketch show Loiter Squad, which ran for 3 seasons. And in 2013, Tyler broadened his industry links by opening for Kid Cudi's tour, hopping on a verse for Kanye West's protege Pusha T, and assisting Mr. Kanye West himself on how to make an effective music video. So I think that's really a testament to how respected Tyler, the Creator, was. The fact that Kanye West, a very acclaimed and esteemed artist, went to Tyler, the Creator to get advice on how to make a good music video says a lot about the visionary as well as the great artist that Tyler is. And it's safe to say that his networking paid off, because his third album, Wolf, debuted at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 200 and featured many successful artists like Frank Ocean, Pharrell Williams, and Erykah Badu. This upward trajectory continued in 2015 with his next album, Cherry Bomb, featuring Kanye West, Lil Wayne, and Schoolboy Q. So again, massive collaborations he's landing, which takes us up to his world tour and then the subsequent Australia and UK ban, which I just mentioned. However, any concerns the public or government officials might have had with Tyler Okonma were well and truly eradicated by the time his next album, Flower Boy, dropped in 2017. This is a very, very pivotal point in Tyler's career. This is really what turns him into, I don't want to say the villain that we all are rooting for, because I think that's quite a quite strong phrase, but it's kind of what makes all of the past accusations against him disappear. As with any artist who has what's deemed a bad or experimental album, it's their follow-up that really acts as a testament to the musician that they are. So although fans found Tyler's Cherry Bomb to be largely experimental and a sort of departure from his usual tight raps, it was this experimentation that in hindsight gave Tyler the freedom he needed to create Flower Boy. In other words, Cherry Bomb walked so Flower Boy could run. This album saw Tyler take off a metaphorical mask. It was the first album of his that dropped the Eminem-inspired transgressive persona and instead replaced it by shedding light on who he really was. Again, this is a very, very key point in Tyler's life. He addressed complex and introspective topics such as unrequited love, broken friendships, and the battle between nostalgia versus growth, marking, again, a move away from the previous themes of misogyny, homophobia, and violence. But what this album surprised the most people with was his honesty around his sexuality. Flower Boy was Tyler the Creator's way of coming out as gay, using tracks like I Ain't Got Time and Garden Shed to literally and metaphorically talk about his self-discovery of finding out he was homosexual. And it was this honesty and transparency that I think ultimately won over the hearts of the public. Especially, you know, the rap and hip-hop industry is kind of renowned stereotypically for being homophobic and for being very, but for very much like objectifying women and talking about women in a very misogynistic way. So for Tyler the Creator, as big and influential as he was at the time, to come out as gay was a massive thing, especially in 2017, which obviously wasn't as progressive and accepting maybe as times are now. Not only was the production on Flower Boy expansive and freeing, but so was the lyrical content. The vulnerability Tyler lent into on this album was a move I don't think people or critics saw coming. Tyler taking off this mask and actually revealing quite personal things about himself, it was a really respectable move he did. I think it was because his previous albums were so violent and so misogynistic and so homophobic. The fact that he kind of did a 180 with Flower Boy just had the whole industry shook, to be honest, which I suppose leads us quite nicely onto Tyler's first #1 album with the 2019 release of Igor. Igor is Tyler the Creator's critically acclaimed concept album that tracks a love triangle between Tyler, his love interest who's a closeted bisexual man, and then that man's female lover, taking the vulnerability and transparency first shed in Flower Boy and extrapolating it even further. The album went on to, rightly so, win Best Rap Album at the 2020 Grammys, where Tyler took the opportunity to call out labels and the music industry at large for putting any genre-bending music made by a black musician into a rap or urban category. And this is an issue that is so huge in the industry, but yet never really gets resolved. Despite its success, Igor didn't have a #1 single, or it didn't have tons of radio airtime, because at the end of the day, his album wasn't deemed as mainstream, which is ridiculous considering it got the #1 spot on the Billboard charts. But to quickly interject, this issue is something that many other artists have continued to talk about to this day. Pop artist Rachel Chinariri put her career on the line by speaking out against this issue about music being put in the wrong category. Her music is a blend of alternative pop and indie pop, yet all her music was being put into R&B and soul playlists on streaming services, due obviously to the colour of her skin. And even Mercury Prize winners this year, the band English Teacher, also addressed the problem on their song R&B, when their lead singer Lily Fontaine joked about being labelled as an R&B singer due to how she looked. So yeah, I think Tyler taking to the mainstream to address the racism that's kind of inherent in the music industry is just another reason. It just gave us all another reason to forgive him of his past allegations and to respect him. And this is kind of something he does so effortlessly, Tyler the Creator. He gains respect without trying to. It's honestly, like, I was talking about this with my friend the other day, and it's so confusing how he has so many messy headlines behind him, but they genuinely, like, whenever you think of Tyler the Creator, you just think of a fantastic artist and visionary. It's not like Kanye West where you think of, oh, what a shame. Do you know what I mean? Where it's kind of like, he was so great until he was so abhorrent. It's not like that with Tyler the Creator. You kind of maybe it's a general, like, a sweeping statement, but I feel like everyone kind of has forgiven him for his first horrific albums, no one seems to think about them anymore. Anyone only ever thinks of him as the respectable visionary that he is. But before I dive further into why Tyler the Creator has fans divided in terms of supporting him, I'll quickly race through the rest of his music career and other ventures. In 2021, he released his next album, Call Me If You Get Lost, which secured him another Grammy for Best Rap Album of the Year. And in October last year, he released his latest, Chromacopia, featuring upcoming artists such as Lola Young, Doechii, and Glorilla. In 2012, Tyler the Creator set up the music festival Camp Flognaw, which, if you paid close attention to, is an anagram of Wolfgang, taken from Odd Future's original name, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, Odd Future, Wolfgang, Kill Them All. And in a similar play on words, Tyler the Creator also launched his clothing brand Golfwang in 2011. So I guess this is why critics have been quick to name Tyler as not only a visionary, but as one of the most influential artists of the decade. In a similar way to last episode's Doechii, Tyler the Creator puts thought into his production, his lyricism, his visuals, his fashion, his staging. It's all powered by his brain. And this is why, although being what some could call a controversial figure, as I just said, all accusations against him are eclipsed by his overwhelming brilliance and talent. And that's really unusual in this day and age where cancel culture is so the be-all and end-all of people's careers. It almost feels like Tyler the Creator has immunity to that. The controversies or scandals I've been kind of hinting at throughout this episode is, of course, Tyler's bans from New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. But it's also been a reference to his alleged incitement of violence. The first situation popped up towards the end of 2011 when Tyler was arrested for vandalism after a fan caught on video Tyler breaking some stage equipment and throwing a microphone at a sound engineer. You know, not an ideal video to have of yourself, is it? This happened after the power was cut halfway through his show at the Roxy in West Hollywood. Nick Adler, the owner of the venue, actually later put out a statement saying that the damage looked worse on camera and everything with him and Tyler were on very amicable terms. He said it was really understandable for Tyler to react in the way he did. You know, he was like, you know, Tyler's putting on the best show of his life. He wasn't aware that people in the crowd were getting squashed. So when the house lights came on and the music got cut, it's fair enough that he got annoyed because it's like, why has that happened? But despite this understanding and this lack of animosity between the two, the police did end up getting involved and Tyler had to pay the Roxy $8,000 in damages. The second situation, which again resulted in the prospect of a year in jail for Tyler, came in March of 2014, a bit more of a serious accusation when Tyler the Creator was accused of inciting a riot after telling fans to push past security at his South by Southwest performance. He ended up having to pay a $25,000 bail to escape being charged. But again, it just became another headline that Tyler didn't need to associate himself with. It's tricky because I feel like because he's so hyperactive and he's so enthusiastic and energetic, it's easy to see that, you know, obviously he wasn't trying to incite a riot. It was just him getting giddy and excited and telling his fans to come and be at the stage. But there's, again, a level of responsibility as an artist where it's like you have to respect safety at a festival or the venue you're playing, and that comes with not rushing the security and not charging past them and injuring them. So yeah, not great for Tyler the Creator. But the most problematic accusation that Tyler can't really shake is the dark cloud that I mentioned earlier that his early works have left, with their encouragement of raping women and using the homophobic F slur. But as I said, Flower Boy seemed to be an unofficial redemption for the artist. Although he by no means directly apologised for his past actions on the album, the shift in tone and the change to transparency helped paint him in a far more admirable and respectable light. And I think it's also his undying confidence in what he says and the nature of truly not having a care in the world to what people think or say about him is what makes Tyler the Creator hard not to love. Again, I was talking about this with my friend, and it's a tricky one because I don't feel like Tyler the Creator's ever taken accountability for his actions. He's never apologised for what he said. You know, he's never apologised for the lyrical content of his music. He's never apologised for damaging the equipment or for rushing the stage. he's always just backed what he said. And whilst from like, I think from an outside perspective, it's so easy to be like, he sounds like a bit of a dickhead. Sorry, but that's true. For some reason, like when you consume his interviews and you consume articles about him and you consume his art, you just can't help but love him. And it's really complicated because I'm like, in most situations, someone who isn't showing accountability for their actions that are wrong, it's like disrespectful to say the least. And it just is a sign of a bit of an idiot, where it's like, how, you know, there comes a point where you need to actually own up to what you've done. But Tyler never does that. He never says sorry, and he never says that what he's done was wrong. He just says, I can see why it's offended people, but it's art at the end of the day, you know? And he says it's about the intention, like, especially with the F slur. He was like, but I didn't, you know, people can take offense from it and that's fine, but it's like, I'm gay and I don't take offense from it. Like, I didn't say it with the intent of offending people. I just said it like a 13-year-old kid playing Fortnite would say it. Like, you just say it and you don't really mean it. So I'm like, if that's your excuse for being allegedly homophobic, why does it feel good enough to forgive him? I don't know. I find it so interesting. I would like to say that he's someone who has a shadow of polarizing accusations tied to his name, but he's a visionary with not a shadow of doubt in the work he puts out. And there's something oddly refreshing about that. So to conclude, whilst Odd Future is labelled as being one of the most influential rap and hip-hop groups of all time, as I said earlier, their difference offering liberation to the music industry, it was really Tyler, the Creator, being nothing but his raw self that gave him the freedom to be the role model and visionary he now is. And so I think it's a valid question to leave you with of, can transparency and vulnerability and ultimate confidence in what you do outweigh a stained and once divided reputation? Or is it just the art of being Tyler, the Creator? I guess we'll see. And on that note, thank you all so much for listening. If you want to keep up to date with all things Six Notes of Separation, make sure to follow us at Six Notes Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. I'll be back very, very shortly with another episode on another artist where we'll be exploring the link between them and Tyler, the Creator.